Hi, this is Joyce Farrell. In this video we're going to structure some unstructured logic. The three structures in structured programming are sequence, selection, and loop. In sequence, one event follows the other. With a selection, a question is asked and one of two logical paths is traveled. And with a loop, a question is asked and while the question continues to be true, the loop body continues to execute. The three structures, sequence, selection, and loop, can be used to solve any programming problem. You must combine them by stacking them or nesting them, but if you get the right combinations, every programming problem can be solved using just these three. Let's take a look at an unstructured flowchart segment. In this unstructured segment, there's a process G followed by a question H. If H is no, there's a process J. If H is yes, there's a question I, and I performs either J or K. Let's take this unstructured segment and make it structured. Start with the first step, which is step G. G is a sequence. It's a sequence of only one step. A sequence might have 2, 3, 5, 20, any number of steps, but as long as there are steps with no chances to branch away, you have a sequence. After G in the flowchart, the next item is question H. H is the beginning of a selection. When H is no, J executes, and that's fine. That's half of a selection. When H is yes, another question executes. Question I. That's fine. You can have a selection structure nested inside a selection structure. So selection I is going to be nested inside selection H. When I is no, however, you can't proceed to the existing step J. That would violate the integrity of the I selection structure. So you repeat J. When I is no, you execute the same steps that you execute when H is no. When I is yes, you execute step K, then you can join together the I selection, and then finally you can join together the H selection, and the I selection is nested entirely inside the H selection. Let's compare the two flowcharts, the original unstructured version and the newly structured version. In both cases, the first step to execute is G. When H is asked, if the answer is no, both flowcharts execute step J. If you start over and do step G and ask H, but the answer is yes, in both cases question I is asked. When I is no, in both cases step J executes. If you start over and do step G and ask H and ask I, if I is yes, in both cases step K executes. The two flowcharts do exactly the same thing, but the first one is unstructured and the second one is structured. Let's take a different unstructured flowchart segment. In this case, there's step L followed by question M, and if M is yes, you do step N, then do step L again. Well, step L by itself is fine. That is part of a sequence. After L, you ask M. M is starting a loop. When the loop is yes, you do step N, and then you do step L. The loop has to repeat step L so that the logic after step L can travel right back to question M. So the loop has M, and it contains a sequence of N and L. Let's compare the original and the structured version. In both cases, you perform step L, then you ask M. If the answer to M is yes, you do step N, and in both cases, you then do step L. After L, you always ask M again. If M is yes, you do N and L, and ask M again. If M is no, the logic ends. Both flowcharts do the same thing, but the first one is unstructured, the second one is structured. Thanks for watching.